Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today. We're going to give everyone a few more minutes to log in and get settled, so it would be a great time to go grab a cup of coffee or a water, and we'll begin the webinar in a few minutes. Hi, everyone. We're just going to give everybody a few more minutes to log in and get settled. We'll start in a few minutes. Hi again, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, What Leading Companies Are Doing Differently and How You Can Catch Up. There's just a few housekeeping notes that I want to go through before we get started. There's two different ways to communicate with us throughout the webinar, the chat box and the Q&A box. Please use the chat box for all technical issues and the Q&A box for any questions related to the webinar. With that, I'd like to introduce our speaker for today. You may recognize Zoe Dowling, SVP of Research here at Focus Vision from previous webinars. Zoe is an eclectic blend of researcher, technologist, sociologist, and marketer with a rich background across functions, industries, and countries. She uses her extensive research expertise to help clients best apply Focus Vision's technological solutions. At this time, Zoe's going to dive right into the presentation. Zoe, would you like to get started?
I would indeed. Thanks very much, Rachel. Good morning, good afternoon, everybody, depending on where you're joining us from. And thank you for sharing this next 30 or so minutes with us. So as Rachel said, I'm going to be talking about the title of the webinar is What Leading Companies Are Doing Differently and How You Can Catch Up. And really this webinar is all about a study that was conducted by Harvard Business Review Analytical Services. It was sponsored by Focus Vision, and it was really digging into how companies are using big and small data and what's going on. And we're going to dig into the results of that. A little bit of a spoiler from the title. This is all about that there are leading companies that are showing us the way, and we're going to dive into what they're doing. So with that, let me just turn off my video so that we can then focus on the slides. So what we're going to cover is there's a number of different things. So we're just going to talk about the gap of customer understanding, and that came out through this study. Then going through the case for big and small data, I think many of you on this webinar, listening to this webinar, will be very familiar with this. We'll know what we mean by big and small data, but we're going to cover it quickly so it's very clear, and talk about why organizations, and this came through in the study as well, why really both is necessary. And then we're going to get into the real meat of it. What are the challenges to customer insight integration for that big and small data? What did we find in this study through the Harvard Business Review Analytical Services? And what can we learn from the leaders? And that's what we'll close up. And as Rachel said, there's a Q&A box, so please do put in some questions. We have a few moments at the end for taking those, so I'll be sure to try and get to that. No surprise to anybody. I've said this before, we'll say it again. everybody else is saying this, we are in the experience economy, where really at times, and it just simply comes down to what's differentiating one brand or one product or service from another, is the customer experience. And I'm just going to tell a short, small story. And I think this is going to be familiar with many people. We all have our own stories, but this is a recent one for me. So a few weeks ago, I moved into a new home. And I think many of you can relate to this as being an experience that's exciting and stressful, along with every other motion on FoodCheck's wheel. Now, there was many tasks at hand, again, as you can imagine, but one stood out for me, and that was securing a new internet service provider for my new home. I'm a remote worker. I do webinars such as this, and so I need a fast, reliable internet service. It's essential. It actually gave me a lot of panicky emotions and fear and all these different things. So I needed to do my research. Who are the top providers in the country? Which one of them are available in my area? How do the respective speeds, contracts, monthly costs compare? And so basically that actually narrowed me down to a scope of two. My existing provider, the one that I had in my old home, and a provider I'd been with many, many years ago. So let's just call them A and B. And as it was, I finally settled on B. Why? Well, they offer excellent download speeds. I'm actually still very excited about my download speeds. They don't require a contract, and they're competitively priced. So this is all fantastic, right? And very good, let's go with them. But the real reason I chose them was down to customer experience. Because whilst the internet connection that an ISP offers, that my original ISP offers is technically superior, everything else falls short. Even just the information gathering I did on their website. And then I was recalling painful phone interactions with troubleshooting previously or adjusting the service. And so with everything else I had going on, I didn't have the heart to deal with cumbersome communication. So when a friend said, hey, the customer service with B has been great, well, that was it. I was sold. And really, this is just one small illustration, a case study of one. But I think it's something that I'm sure you can think of your own example at the top of your head, where it's just, you know what, that experience, it makes or breaks the purchase decision. It covers, and the experience really covers every interaction that the customers have with your brands, from the advertising messages, the website visits, the content consumed, to purchase transactions and customer service exchanges. Is a holistic view of the interaction with your company. So today, yes, we're all about the experience economy. Now, as I've mentioned, the focus of today's webinar is really to talk about the findings from a recent study published by Harvard's Business Review Analytical Services. We sponsored it because we were really interested in exploring the roles of big and small data organizations and understanding the customers. Because again, as part of today's experience economy, it is all about your customers and thinking about them. And something quite interesting came out of this. So the HBRAS surveyed over 600 executives familiar with the organization's customer experience strategy to find out where the biggest pain points are, what organizations are seeing better returns around their programs, what the role of big data and small data have been in CX management successes and failures. And they also interviewed a small group of CX leaders, academic and industry experts, and we're going to draw from some of them momentarily. So one of the first things that was asked was, and found was that it was almost unanimous that people believe, these executives believe, that understanding customers is crucial to creating relevant customer experiences. Again, just talking about the experience economy, and this is played through. You've got to deliver relevant customer experiences and positive ones at that. The challenge is that only 23%, so just over a fifth, say that they actually understand very well why their customers act the way that they do. So there's a disconnect there. It's incredibly important to understand your customers, but only a fifth really say, hey, yeah, I know my customers and why they're acting the way they do. Customer experience strategy is also predominant within these organizations. So you had 2/3, around 72%, have a customer experience strategy in place. But there was another disconnect. Only a fifth claim that strategy is working well. So it's challenging. That we know that we're in this experience economy. We know that relevant customer experiences are crucial, most of us have an experience strategy in place, but it's not working so well. And the thing is if I'm just jumping away from the HBRAS study at the moment and going back to a Forrester study that was commissioned by Focus Vision earlier this year. And the really fascinating thing that came out of that study was that, just being able to put down on paper, how important it is, how your customers think and feel drive your business outcomes, that purchase, loyalty, and advocacy. Okay, that's the things that we all want. But what was fascinating there is the role of emotions. Feel has 1.5 times more impact than think. How those those range of emotions that go through. And I was talking about my internet service provider. The fear, I need my internet connection to work, but the joy with my download speeds. Things like that. But those emotions really do play a role. And we see with this Forrester study that that emotion really has more impact on these business outcomes. So it's all tying together. Now, as we can see, how do we understand our customers? How do we get to understanding how they think, feel, and act? And there's two parts. We've heard a lot about big data in recent years, and big data, it's often been called the 4 or 5 V's: volume, veracity, and so on, about how much it comes in, how quickly it comes in. It's generally cloud-based because there's just so much of it. It might be things like your web analytics, your clickstream data, social interactions. It can also be your POS data, your transactions, your CRM data. It's all of this data that we have, and all of that data tells you what's going on. Small data, sometimes called thick data, sometimes called granular data. That's the business we're in at Focus Vision. I'm going to wager that that's the business that many of you are in, is around that the information we get from user surveys, from interviews and focus groups, from mobile diaries, ethnographies, online communities, and so on. That kind of rich data helps say why people are acting the way that they do, and really getting into the nuggets, more getting to the psyche. So just to bring this together, big data, it helps us understand human actions and behaviors, the what, whereas small data helps us understand the attitudes, emotions behind those behaviors. So it's bringing the what and the why together, and that's why both, and that's certainly what we feel, and that's certainly what the findings of the study kind of came to be, that when you bring these together, you're creating that holistic view of what's going on. Now, just going on, this is a lovely quote from Martin Lindstrom. Many of you may be familiar with him. He's the author of a book called Small Data, with quite tiny clues that uncover huge trends. It's published 3 or 4 years ago. It's a really good read if you've not read it. And he was interviewed as part of this study, and he said, the biggest problem with corporate data today is that everybody's so obsessed with getting big data solutions on board. But you have to get your hands dirty to see the world from the customer's point of view. You have to put yourselves in their shoes and feel what they feel. Then you have something valuable. Again, it's bringing together. And one example of this kind of, say, obsession with big data and reliance on it also came from an interviewee within the study. Now, here's an example from that Katie Lechner, Head of Global Insights from Gap, provides in the study. And of course, this is something you can read yourself. It's downloadable from our site, and I'm sure we'll be sharing it out as well. But the example that she gave was that Gap has an abundance of data on customer behavior, and until recently we'd make assumptions based on that data. And there was an example, it was a while back, 10 years ago, the company launched a major initiative to help to install help buttons in the fitting rooms of its stores. And this was based on all sorts of data, the big data that they had gathered. The challenge is, and you can see this from the quote on screen, is that we put all of this effort into creating new processes and operationalizing it. The customers weren't using it. We didn't understand why. We'd put the cart before the horse. So they had done all the what was going on, created a solution that I'm sure was thought to have a lot of promise, and then it wasn't used because they hadn't understood that why. Okay. So now I can imagine you're thinking to yourself, yes, this is great. We know big and small data, creating that holistic picture and implementing the organization is the way to go. But it can feel like, looking at Everest here and climbing it. There are many impediments to customer experience management success within organizations. And I'll just run through what was found in the report. There was 4 key ones that kind of came through. The first one, I know the first one resonates with me. It's something I've heard an awful lot about from the conference circuit, from talking to industry colleagues, the last year and a half, things I've written about. And it's the real challenge facing every single department around organizational silos. It's tough. We know that business has been set up and doing the way that it's been doing for decades, in some cases centuries. That process business processes haven't always changed, and now we're in this time of rapid change. And so all departments have their own scramble issues. We need to do this, we need to do that. Insights is not least one of them, but it can mean that it's very difficult to share. And again, just taking this quote from the study from Jerry Murray, research director at IDC, talking about when it comes to the challenges of customer experience management, it's silos, silos, silos. People in the organization that serve the same customers and might have insight or data about them can't find each other or share that information. And so this is one of the biggest challenges, I think, overall, as I've said, for every department. But when we're really trying to share that information on the customer in order to create those crucial, relevant experiences, sometimes that's just get lost because of the way we're set up, the way that it's silos between different departments and structures and so on. So we have the silos. Other things that contribute to sort of an impede sort of really getting customer experience management in place and integration of big and small data is systems and processes. The inconsistent, the study found, inconsistent collection of data, lack of data management systems, data standardization issues, having to work with legacy systems also impeded the small big data integration efforts. And of course, data being dispersed across the organization. So just the systems and processes in place, I think contribute, and it's all related. I mean, organizational silos, if you've got different systems and processes and collecting data in different ways and so on, that's all part of why it is so challenging to do this type of integration. Prioritization. So part of the problem is also capacity. We know within insights that our the mantra, the new normal, the mainstream now is better, faster, cheaper. We have to do things quickly, and we have to do them on a very low budget, and we have to give answers now. And so part of the problem is capacity, and really being clear on what is a clear priority and staying laser focused on it. There was a really interesting discussion at TMRE recently at the TMRE conference, and Mary Colleen Hershey from Nestle talked about prioritization and many other things as they completely imagined their customer insights team. And one of her things was we just had to be laser focused, and we had to prioritize and take away things that just were not a good use of our time. And this is challenging. All of this is challenging. I think let's not make two bones about this. So prioritization. And then the final piece is knowledge sharing. Again, I think this is very much tied to all of these other three. They're all interlinked. But disseminating customer knowledge informed bit by bit, informed by big and small data can be difficult. Training and skills are also problematic and come into this. And again, this is something that I've heard repeatedly at conferences across this year and last, in industry blogs and talking to people. The skill sets needed within insights departments are changing. They're becoming broader. So do people have the skills as well as the systems and processes and tools and so on in order to facilitate this knowledge share? And knowledge share for me also means education. The roles of insights professionals changing as data has become more democratized, as every department needs to understand, is hungry to understand their customers. There can be a lot of requests for that customer understanding. And in many times, it's not appropriate for a small insights team to tackle, and so they're doing it themselves. but that knowledge share and how to actually ask the questions in the correct way, or how to be looking at the data in the correct way, so that it's not being misinterpreted, misinformed, and so on. So I think that's another element of knowledge share. It's not just about we have this information, how to access it, but it's how to access it and interpret it and put it to good use. So those are the 4 areas, broad buckets that came out within the HBRAS study as being real key impediments to customer experience management, success, and the integration of big and small data. Now, as indicated in the title of this webinar, there is hope. There are a small subset, it was all of 15% of the study that emerged as leaders, those companies and organizations that were or are having success in integrating their big and small data. And so let's look at what we can learn from them. What are they doing so that they've managed to, they have the same challenges and barriers as everybody else. So what have they done in order to try and overcome those barriers? But let's first look at the success that they're having. So when we have a look at how they, understanding why customers act the way that they do, if we look at them saying, hey, very well, so in that top, over half of them say, yes, we understand our customers very well. And if we look at this, this is bucketing the participants into sort of three groups along that kind of adoption curve: leaders, followers, laggards. The next ones, the followers were at 20%, and then we get another steep decline to 8% for the laggards. So those leaders, again, a small proportion, 15% of all the study participants, but they're doing a good job in understanding how why their customers are acting the way that they do. And similarly, when asked about, what about in digging into, well, how would you rate your overall effectiveness of your organization's CX strategy? Again, over half are saying, yeah, no, it's very effective. And that's where we have the sort of the smaller, the 18% and the 5% for the laggards. So these leaders, they're saying, hey, we understand our customers and substantially better than the other groups. And we're also feeling that our CX management strategy is very effective. Now, everybody, all participants, and I think this goes for can be generalized across the board, that we all can think about the benefits of customer insight integration, and we all kind of feel, and within this study, 85% say, hey, the benefit of having this data integration between big and small is you're going to increase your customer satisfaction, loyalty, retention. But beyond that, there's a number of other benefits to be had from new product service innovations, from remaining competitive within your category. And then, of course, there's kind of the ROI aspect of it, the business outcomes from revenues or sales, from operational efficiency, increased market share. These are the things that we all want. And that was the beauty, if you like, that we saw with the leaders, that they were able to show almost the ROI of this insight integration, this insight integration, data integration between big and small data. So they asked, how's your organization's performance changed over the last year? And you can see the leaders, and at the smallest one, it's maybe like a 10-point gap, but it can get as high as 15 or 20%. They're doing better in speed to market, in employee satisfaction, which is incredibly important too. We know that that's a massive part of delivering a customer experience. Down to just, let's go straight to the bottom line. Hey, we all want to see revenue growth, increased revenues and business growth. And that's what they're saying they're seeing in the last year. So there is, if you like, an ROI to having this to really relying on your customer insight, but also to create that holistic picture through big and small data. So what are the leaders doing? What can we learn from them? Is there a golden wand that we can take from them and learn? And of course not. It's still challenging. And there's 7 areas that the leaders are doing and what they put into place. And I'm not going to make any bones about it. I still think it's incredibly difficult, but they've embraced this challenge. So if we have a look at this, and starting first and foremost, and I think is number one, is really that you do need, and they've managed to get the executive buy-in to the need to integrate big and small data. Without that, you really are climbing Everest without any equipment. You know, there is there's got to be the belief, there's got to be the support from the highest levels, from the CEO, from the executive team, to invest in it. We'll see, you know, there is an investment required, and making sure that there is that support. And so that's something that the leaders have successfully managed to do. Another interesting thing that came out through the study was that the leaders are actually employing all sorts of big and small data methodologies. So, and emerging ones, I should say. So on the big data side, clickstream telemetry, I don't think I said that right. They're also using, so they're using more emerging types of big data. They're also using emerging types of small data methodologies, such as mobile diaries, online communities, online focus groups, and so on. So that's kind of interesting. They're integrating newer types of data, other types of data. They're also getting the investment. And I talked about, and the reason that, you know, to go back to the, and I think investments probably across the board, but they're getting that data management systems that in place, ensuring data collection consistency. One of the things, and I just pose this out there, and I'd be very curious if anybody on the line has thoughts on this, that, you know, certainly within customer insights, we just look at that specifically with this better, faster, cheaper mantra that's by necessity, and it is just what we have to do. But I wonder how much that has sidelined the investment required that would really facilitate the better, faster, cheaper as part of the everyday. But you need the necessary data management systems. You need data collection consistency, because that's going to ultimately allow the progression on the day-to-day of delivering insights and information, bringing different information streams together in a effective way on a daily basis. So what else do we have? Breaking down organizational silos. I wish there was more to it than this, because it is not easy. I think it's tenacity that is required there. And going back to that first one about the executive buy-in, but it's also then buy-in and pushing through the entire organizations. So it's really, you know, data integration is necessary, but it's not sufficient. The organization has to come together around the customers. And I think that's key. And so it's that, it is that very challenging place where we're at with organizational silos, but they do need to be broken down, because the organization, you know, the center of the organization really has to be the customer, not different departments and what they're doing and doing things in silos. I mean, that could be anything from, you know, from things that products doing or and operations and services and so on. So it's about breaking down and really seeing it as a whole around that customer. There's also, and I think this is linked again, a bit like the challenges faced, the things the leaders are doing are all very much interlinked with one another. Say from the executive buy-in, from the breaking down of silos, from the using of the investment in systems and processes, but also then equipping users with the necessary analytical skills and tools to provide those critical insights. Going back to, do we have the right people, the right makeup within departments to provide the answers? And insights teams and customer experience management teams are changing, and I think that there's the I think a very sound role for what we might call so-called traditional researchers. There's also that being you know, survey experts, but qualitative experts, anthropologists, user experience. It's also economists, the data scientists, and whatever is relevant for your particular brand or industry. I think that it's about bringing in the right skills in terms of people, but also the right skills in terms of the right tools in terms of if it's programs or systems that's required. B, the integration. And I think this is an interesting one. I think it's for CX organizations, it's critical for them to build close ties to the business. And it's something I thought about and written about certainly in the last year, that I think that CX teams and CI teams are beautifully placed within the organization because they actually have this role and understanding of everyone, of the customers. They have a deep understanding of the customers. They're going out and asking the questions of the customers, or they're exploring and digging into the data. So they're really sort of getting that to grips with who the customers are, and it's all about the customer. Equally, they're talking to their stakeholders within the organization, different departments and teams, to understand what are their needs, what are their challenges. This was something that we heard, it was a couple of months ago, we did a panel webinar that talked to a number of three different researchers in different organizations, Experian, Detroit Pistons, and ADP. And what was fascinating there, if you haven't had a chance to listen to that webinar, I actually suggest you do, because it talks about a lot of the things that I'm talking about today. You know, the hands-on experience on maybe convincing the value of different types of data, in particular small data. It's also about the skill sets required. It's also about really getting to know and understand and taking the time to talk to your stakeholders. And I think that, for me, is where I read this beam integration is. It's about the CX organization building close ties with all aspects of the business and being that conduit between the customer and the business, being the bridge of providing customer insights throughout the organization. And lastly, this really goes back to prioritization, which we know is a real challenge for everyone. Is maintaining focus. You know, within the HBRAS study, you know, they sort of said, you know, given the opportunity, most organizations will effectively return to their familiar ways of working. And CX leaders must be vigilant. It's keeping that focus. It's being laser focused on the end goal and not letting it drift away. And again, that's another massive challenge, particularly when the new, I don't know, the shiny new thing comes along, or the big red flag comes along. Hey, we've got to deal with this all now. But it is about maintaining focus, you know, just being vigilant in, hey, this is the path that we need to be on. It's going to take time. Change takes time. And it is a struggle. But I get from all of these kind of 7 points as to what leaders have done. It's the effort and the buy-in across the whole organization that this is a move we need to make, and this is what we've done. And what I would say is, you know, there's some skepticism of this is the challenge, and how do we as each individual, what role do we have to play in it? Well, there are all these small things that we can all do to add up to a big collective piece. But there is also the ROI to come back to. Remember that slide that I showed you? Hey, these leaders, they're seeing the business results they all want. And I think that's incredibly powerful to be able to take back to your executive teams, to your CEO, to say, you know, your CFO, look, there's value to this, and we need to think about investing in it. So that's what I would say with what to take away from what the leaders are doing. So just very briefly, I'm going to close up with how Focus Vision can help. And we're in the business of small data. And we offer, you know, as part of the Experience Insights technology market, we offer the full spectrum of small data toolkits, so that you can understand your customer truth. And that goes through survey software with the Focus Vision Decipher, online focus groups and live video, online research communities and mobile ethnographies and diaries through Revelation, online focus groups, interviews, and so on. And then all brought together by our Video Insights platform. Video is the core. I think video is another very, very compelling way that we can bring our customers to life, that we can help break down some of those organizational silos by showing different departments, this is what's going on. These are the people that we are all working to hopefully delight, but critically create those relevant experiences. So that's where Focus Vision plays in this space. I'm going to pause shortly to take any questions, because we've got a few minutes left in our scheduled time today. But when I was thinking about what am I taking away from this Harvard Business Review Analytical Services study, what are we left with around sort of that holy grail thing, I think, around of integrating big and small data. And I think you know, this is no surprise. It's but I still think I'm pausing because it still, for me, resonates about how important customer experience is and how it can be that make or break scenario. And when you go through your own day-to-day life as a customer, like that internet service provider example I gave at the beginning of this time together, it really is a make or break. And when you take that to your professional life, you think, wow, okay, how do I bring this in? How do I make sure that I'm trying to address this within as part of my role? So customer experience being make or break. I also know that, big data, I mean, it's there, it's unwieldy. The data scientist jobs are there, the sexy ones these days. We want all the people with the sort of the high numeric modeling, whatever skills. The small data can often be a hard sell because it doesn't feel as substantive, because it's not as, perhaps perceived as robust. If we go back to that Martin Lindstrom quote when he's saying, that there is all this kind of real drive to get these big data solutions on board, but we can often lose that granular piece, that really understanding the why is incredibly important. And again, that's something that came up, again, recent conference, TMRE, but all these other conferences, there is, like, to really understand that why, you've got to speak to the customer. And so that's sometimes a hard sell, but it is as a necessity. You really got to get into their hearts and minds. You're not alone, is what I was also thinking. We are all struggling with this. It does feel insurmountable. It is no accident that I chose somebody looking at Everest as an imagery to depict what kind of challenge it feels like. But we're all grappling with it. And I think the other thing that I'm thinking about, and the conversations that I find very invigorating these days, is talking to colleagues, is talking to industry professionals and across the different sectors and so on, to hear about the challenges being had and the small steps being taken to overcome them, because that is how we're going to succeed. We're not going to leapfrog. It is going to be step by step. And so we're all not alone. So I definitely urge people to share and embrace what other people are doing, and hear their challenges and perhaps even their failures, and also celebrate their successes. And then the final bit was that, there is an ROI to insight integration. There is a benefit towards it. It is about, understanding the customer in every way, and that ultimately does have an impact on the bottom line, and that makes everybody happy. So this isn't just a nice to have. This has got real business impact, and so that, I think, is a real key piece that certainly I took away from the study. So with that, we have, I think, all about 3 minutes for questions. So Rachel, I'm going to hand it over to you and see if anybody's got had anything come in.
Sure. Thanks so much for a great presentation, Zoe. There are quite a few questions that have already come in, so we should get started before we run out of time. The first one is, what is the breakout between leaders, followers, and laggards in the report?
Oh, that's a good question, and I forgot to kind of put that in there. So it was quite interesting. So again, leaders made up all of 15% of the total group, with the followers being 38% and the laggards 35%. And there was some that weren't able to classify themselves. So and just in pure number size, that was 95 participants for leaders, 235 for followers, and 214 for laggards. So interesting breakout, and how most of the people, and kind of quite an even split, that 38, 35% between followers and laggards. We can see that there's a lot of work to be done.
Great. Another one came in. I'm having a hard time convincing my peers that this small data is as important as the big data they're collecting. Do you have any ideas, any advice?
Yeah, and that was something that came up. I mentioned a couple of times that panel discussion. We had a webinar a few months back that's available in our resource library too, if you haven't seen it. And it is worth a listen, because there's 3 enterprise level researchers that talk about the battle it can be at times to convince the need for small data. And that can be a survey, but equally, doing the qualitative research, it feels very subjective, and it doesn't feel as believable. These everybody's kind of wanting the numbers. If it's numeric, it must be true, and we all know that that's not the case. So I think there's challenges in doing that, but one of the things that I am a big believer in is actually the role of video, and how you can bring that customer into the boardroom, that how you can bring that customer to life, and your customers, all of them collectively, and it's a very compelling, convincing tool. So one way, one small way would be to try and incorporate some more videos in your outputs, just as a way to really hammer it home, because it has that kind of impact. But equally, just stay the course, and believe in it, and because it does this type of data, and is incredibly informative, and it does drive business decisions, and it needs to be done. So hang in there, stay the course.
Mm-hmm. It looks like we have time for 2 more questions, and I found 2 pretty interesting ones. One is, we're running surveys after customer interactions. Is that the small data you're talking about?
Yeah, surveys is definitely one aspect of it, for sure. Because, and small data is very manageable. It's something that has sort of the definition of it is around it's something that, you know, for human comprehension, it can be stored on sort of a computer, as opposed to having to be cloud based because of the size of it, the volume of it, that comes in slowly. That's what small data is. So survey is definitely one aspect of it. I'm very, very much a passionate believer is that we shouldn't, surveys are incredibly valuable and important, but let's not just rely on that. By getting in depth and asking questions and getting to see your customers' lives through their lens, and through qualitative is important too. But yes, that's what we mean by small data.
Great. And the last one that we have time for is, how's the best way to combine big data and small data into valuable and actionable insights?
Oh, that's a big question, and that is just part of I'm going to say the challenge, and having a look at what the leaders have done. It is about having the right skill sets in place, so that the people that are understanding and reading and working and managing and cleaning and all the different things with the big data, and asking the right questions of it. And the same on the other side with the small data. So having the skill sets, the people, the tools, the infrastructure in place, and then have these people work together. And that's why it's so challenging, is because it's not just, there isn't a very simple, straightforward answer I could give to this. I really wish I could, but it's about having the right systems, structures, infrastructures, knowledge sharing, about the right people, and all these different things in place, and then you're bringing it together. And then I think the other final bit to that we haven't really talked about, but it's about how that information is disseminated, and the storytelling aspect to it. You know, there's been a lot about storytelling in delivering insights in order to bring it to life, to make it actionable, to make it have impact. And I think that's the sort of the final piece in the chain that needs to be done, because you can't just, you know, present or dump a pile of data or slides or charts or numbers or whatever it may be on somebody's desk, virtually or physically. There does need to be a story told, and why, and what does this mean. So that's what's going to be this, how it gets distilled into value and actual insights. But it's not easy, and there's no one single way of doing it, and it's really going to depend on a particular organization, the type of data that they're working with, their infrastructure, and so on.
Thanks so much, Zoe, and thank you so much for joining us today. That was a wonderful discussion. Unfortunately, it looks like we reached the end of our time together. If there were any questions that didn't get answered, we'll definitely follow up soon, or you can send us an email at webinars@focusvision.com, and we'll respond to your question at that time. We hope you enjoyed the webinar, what leading companies are doing differently and how you can catch up. And we hope to see you at future webinars. Have a great day, everyone.